Hello, 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 and welcome to F and Fridays with Francine. I'm super excited for this conversation today. Today, I have Hannah Corbett with me. She is a community builder, entrepreneur, and an advocate for genuine human connection. And for those of you who have been around, you know I love connection, so I'm going to love this conversation. She is the founder of Presence & Co., a modern third place just outside of Boston, designed to help people step away from digital distractions, reconnect with themselves, and build meaningful connection in an increasingly disconnected world. Before launching her own business, Hannah spent a decade working inside traditional healthcare, focused on operations, partnerships, and strategy, trying to help fix a system that so often falls short of supporting humans as whole people. I so love that. Her personal journey through burnout, healing, and intentional living inspires her work every day. Today, Hannah is passionate about creating spaces and experiences that support whole person well being, promote health literacy, and help people reconnect with what matters most. Through Presence & Co., she is building a modern, screen-free social club where adults can make new friends, share real connections, real conversations, and build meaningful lives without the pressure of devices or alcohol. The club's intentional gatherings and experiences are rooted in the 8 dimensions of well being, helping people slow down, connect, and find joy beyond the noise of daily life. Hannah, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So, share your journey. I know a little bit about it, but for the listeners, share your journey of how this came about and explain the name Presence and Co. and also third place, right? That was the first time I heard it. We had to re-record because I thought I made a mistake when I read it. So share all that.
Awesome. So I would love to share. So Presence and Co is a third place, and a third place is a term for a space that is not work and is not home. It is a third place to go and be in community and to meet people and to hang out. It's more of a social space. So there's not very many of them in the US where you go and you're just hanging out to hang out, where you're going to meet new people to meet people. We often go to restaurants and bars, but unfortunately, we usually go with our friends, or we'll invite someone. We'll go on a date. We'll be out in public, but we have an intention of why we're there. So a third place in the way that I'm building it is really a place for people to come and hang out so that they can meet new people in order to have people to go to restaurants with, in order to make friends to go to bars with or whatever. Obviously,
Like your
bars are not
step
my
one, right? You're like the
yeah,
first date.
definitely. And I think, friendship is something that we all need. We need more connection. We need more friendship. We need, in adulthood, it is so much harder to make friends because we are outside of the social structures of, childhood. When we're children, we're always in the same room as people. And so, by design, we have friends. And once you graduate college, you're really kind of thrust into this world. And if you maybe move to a new city because you got a job, or if you're in a different area, maybe all your friends moved away. That's happened to a few of my friends. So what do you do for friendship then? Well, you have to kind of find new places to build. So that's kind of the place that I'm trying to build, and it's born out of my own experience. So I moved to Boston in 2021, and this was the second time as an adult I had moved to a major city. And when I got here, it was really hard to make friends. And, people are always like, oh, well, you can go on the apps. And it's like, I don't really want another app to solve things. I want humans. I want to meet people. Like,
Right.
I don't need another app. Thank you very much. And so I started going to a lot of one-off events, and they're great, and I love them. But the truth is, it takes 80 to 100 hours to make a friend. And where do we spend 80 to 100 hours to meet
Right.
people? Like, they're not very many places. So I would often go to these events and they would be one-offs. And so I'd see these people and they'd be great, but like there's nothing really to build on. And you're not seeing them regularly, so there's nothing to like grow over time. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to build here at Presence and Co. Is that piece of overtime growth. I was laid off in 2023 from a startup, a healthcare startup, and I decided, this is the time to really figure out what to do with my life and figure out what I want to be when I grow up and really like, go through that journey. And I ended up on a retreat that was no devices for a week, and it was incredible and amazing, and I loved it. And it was awesome. But the piece that I felt was really challenging, I went to this retreat in Europe. And so all my friends are now all over the globe,
Right.
which is super helpful and also not helpful at all. Um,
Right.
so I was like, well, if I wanted to build community, what could I build more locally? And so that's kind of where Presence and Co is born. And as I mentioned before, Presence and Co doesn't stand for company. A lot of people think it does. It actually stands for courage and connection. So the courage to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart, and connection as the energy that builds between people when they feel seen, valued, and heard.
I love all of that. I wrote an article a couple of years ago, and I think it was titled something like a woman in my 50s trying to date other women. I'm a straight woman in my 50s trying to date other women, because that's what making friendship is in midlife, right? When I was in my 40s, I was like, where did all my girlfriends go? And that's how I started down the path of where I am today. I found this women's group, and they had these monthly workshops, which we're going to be doing at Presence and Co, and we'll talk about a little bit about that. But um that's where I started finding and then they did these annual retreats, but it still was a once a month thing. There are still some women that I talk to, 3 times a year maybe, right? But they're not like the friends that you pick up the phone and say, hey, want to go to the mall, hey, I want to grab dinner or whatever, because that takes. And in this article, I talk about the first time I did that. I was dating, right? I met this
Yes.
woman at one of the retreats, and we hit it off. And I think we might have had like lunch. We met for lunch. And then, it's kind of well, what do you do next? Does she like me? Should I call her again? And there was this event I wanted to go to. And I was like, okay, let me see if she wants to go with me, right? And send her that. But it does it. I mean, now it's, I don't know, 10, 15 years later, and we're still good friends. But it does take that vulnerability piece of being willing to ask, hey, want to grab dinner? Hey, want to do this thing? And that is a struggle sometimes for people. And like you said, the 80 to 100 hours. If you're not working in a corporate setting, and so many people are working from home now, right? There's so much more solitude. It makes it harder.
Yes. No, it definitely does. And I think the vulnerability piece is what's core there.
Yeah.
Like vulnerability is the first thing you look for in others, and it is the last thing you want to show in yourself. And so it's like, well, but if you don't put
Yeah.
yourself out there, if you're not your real self, like you're going to come off in a way that's not authentic, and it's not necessarily going to vibe with the person that you're trying to make friends with. So it's like we
Right.
do have to be open to being vulnerable, and we do need to like be willing to put ourselves out there. And sometimes it's super scary, and sometimes it's terrible. And even if it is, it's worth it in the end.
Right. I talk a lot about vulnerability. I think almost every client I work with struggles with it, and I always send them to the Brene Brown TED Talk, right? Like that's basic vulnerability 101. And my definition of vulnerability is your willingness to ask, regardless of what the answer is going to be. Right? Because you can't, and most people won't put themselves out there for fear of what the response is going to be. But I think vulnerability is putting yourself out there regardless of what the response is going to be. Because the other person can say, no, thanks, but I'm good. I don't want to go to the expo with you, or I don't want to have dinner. But you still put yourself out there and allowed yourself the opportunity for a potential connection or whatever it is.
Yeah. No, I think that's super important. And I think just sometimes people will say no. Sometimes they won't want to do whatever you're doing. And maybe that's not
Sure.
on you. Maybe they don't want to go to the expo. Maybe that's
Right.
not their thing. But the longest running study on happiness done by Harvard found that, and it's still running to this day, the best indicator of a long and happy life is social connection. It
Hmm.
is the most important piece. It doesn't matter what area you live in, it doesn't matter how much money you make, it matters how much connection you have and how connected you are to the people around you. And so if we're thinking about how do I have a successful life for myself, that happiness piece, it's pretty high for a lot of us. And I think a lot of us don't feel that way on a day-to-day basis, and we want to get there. And it's like, how do you get there? Well, you have good times with friends. You belly laugh, and
Right.
you go and do fun things, and have inside jokes and crazy things. And so I think that's what I want more of in the world.
Yeah, I love that. I connections is one of my top values. And I have lost some very close friends over the last few years with no understanding or reasoning why. And I struggle with that because it is so important to me. And I'm like, what happened? Like, how did we just all of a sudden fall apart, right? And it is important to me to have those connections in my life. Now, I have obviously gotten other relationships, but they're newer and it's a little bit, you're still in the dance, right? Because it is still the getting to know each other. Can I laugh with you, until I'm crying and rolling on the floor, right? That takes some time to develop that type of relationship. So let's talk a little bit about the digital detox because that's a really important part at Presence and Co, right? So
Yes, I'm all about it.
yeah,
Yeah. So
how do you bring that to the people there? Because in this world of like we live by our phones, how does that show up at Presence and Co?
yeah. So I think one piece of the digital detox is, if you say to a person, basically anyone off the street, do you think you spend too much time on your phone? The answer is almost always going to be yes.
And if they say no, they're lying.
If they say no, they may not be very self-aware, or they may be one of the very few people that I've found with
Right.
incredible
Yeah.
boundaries. But I'm not building this place from a place of judgment of like, you should be off your phone.
Right.
I'm building this from a place of, I need to be off my phone. And what boundaries do I need to do for that? So, when you walk in the door at Presence and Co., the first thing you see is a closet that has phone jail, affectionately named. And there's little lockers for your phone. You get a little key on a bracelet so that you can keep it with you. And we're putting our phones in the lockers, and we're hanging out in the space together. I think some of the things that keep us from having genuine connection and really focusing in on each other when we are in person is the devices. If I'm feeling slightly uncomfortable in a networking event, I will pull my phone out as a shield, because if I'm on my phone, I'm like important and I'm not standing by myself in the corner. You know what I mean? And like, I came to
Absolutely.
this place to connect. So,
Yeah.
when I use that phone as a shield, I'm like, oh, Hannah, do better. Like, you can do it. So
Right.
I'm just asking that people, when they come into the space, we all want to be on our phones a little bit less, and we all know that. And I think some people really like the excuse that they can blame the wicked witch Hannah. She's made us put our phones away. I can't be on it. I can't,
Right.
sorry. And like, that's, you can totally blame me all you want. That's totally fine. But I do think I think a lot of people are very intrigued by the idea of like going back and pretending like it's the 90s or the 80s.
Right. I go on a lot of retreats and I was in a healing school for many years and we would have like 3-day weekends and I would like leave my phone and check it once or twice a day, but it was so beautiful to not be that committed to it. And my sister once said to me, because I don't sleep with my phone in my bedroom, like I have an alarm clock, I'm old school. And I was sleeping with it for a while because I was meditating first thing in the morning and just grabbing it. But I found I wasn't always meditating first thing. I was scrolling and I'm like, I am not even out of bed yet. So I stopped and I don't have a home phone anymore. And I had a conversation with one of my sisters once because I woke up and there was like text chain, like I was like, what's going on? And it was nothing crazy. And I said, oh, I'm just catching up. I don't sleep with my phone in my room. And one of them said, well, what if something happened? And I was like, well, if you were dead, you'd still be dead when I woke up at 8. And she was like, that's awful. I'm like, but it's true, right? Like me having my phone right next to me wasn't going to change some tragic event, right? I would find out about it when I woke up, right? But it's like we are so attached, like there's this instant gratification of it has to happen now. For someone who's addicted to their phones or addicted to scrolling, but really craving more presence, or maybe even they may not be craving it, but they know they need more of it. What's one small step they can start to take to reconnect with themselves?
Yes. And I say that as my phone alarm literally just ran off next to me. I sorry, is my afternoon. I don't even know why that was said. Um, but no, it's all about boundaries, and it's about knowing yourself. So I love that story about your sister, because I personally, like, I struggle and I do sleep with it in my room and I also use it as an alarm and it's one of the things that I struggle with. Um, but I have started just being really intentional with my phone and kind of like just paying attention. So if I wake up and I start scrolling and I scroll, it could be for 4 minutes, it could be for 40 minutes. Sometimes we like get caught in these loops and we're just scrolling forever.
Right.
I notice after that, I do not have as productive a day. My
Mm,
productivity plummets. If I
interesting.
wake up and I just immediately go get coffee, because I will not be doing anything before that. If I wake up and go get my coffee and come back upstairs and then go to my computer and I start working on whatever it might be that I'm working on, and I leave my phone in my room till 10 a.m., 11 a.m., noon, and my productivity for that day has just like gone through the roof. And it's just noticing that about yourself. Like
Yeah.
maybe there are certain times where you could leave your phone physically in a different room, because I'm also kind of lazy. Like if my phone's in my other room, like I'm not going to stand up to go scroll. Like
Right. Right.
0% chance that's happening. But,
Yeah.
you know, if it's sitting next to me, I'm probably going to pick it up and start scrolling at some point for some reason
Right.
and then get caught in some kind of a loop. So it's boundary setting and kind of knowing like, oh, I'm on a date right now. I absolutely refuse to touch my phone while I'm on a date. Like it has to stay away unless like for some reason I have to escape the state. But like it has to stay away. And I do the same thing with friends. There's actually studies that say like when you have the phone sitting on the table, say you're in a coffee shop or whatever with your friends and you're having it, leads to more distraction and less connection. So
Mhm.
putting your phones
Yeah.
physically out of sight when you're like trying to meet with people actually does like something different to our brains.
I look at, I have an 18-year-old niece and she just graduated high school and I hosted her graduation party at my house. And all of her friends were on their phones the whole time, right? And I read oracle cards and I was doing some readings for some of them at the end of the day. And I was like, oh my God, some of these kids are so intuitive, but they are so unconscious by the thing in their hand that they can't even pay attention to any inner guidance that's coming through for them because they're so distracted by everything else.
I 1,000% feel that. And that's how I was like looking back at, my trajectory and my career and my
Sure.
um I call myself corporate chaos Hannah. There was like a decade of that and we are now out of that, but just like taking the time to be present in your body and like turn off the phone and have silence, like genuine silence. My brother, I love him dearly, always has an earbud in one ear, like always. There is always background chatter of no matter what he's doing. And sometimes he's watching multiple screens at once. And I'm just like, there's no way for you to have a unique thought or an original idea or to like hear any intuitive inner guidance because you're so distracted. And I think that's a huge concern for all generations. At this point, I don't yes, younger generations are using their phones more, but also some of them are intentionally using their phones less. So I think it's across all generations. At this point, these little button boxes, as my grandmother used to call them, addicting all the way around.
Yeah. In what ways do you think being busy has become our what's happening now, like socially acceptable addiction, right? Like I talk about this addiction to busyness, and how do you think we can change that or challenge that?
Yes, I totally agree. You're 100% right. The busyness thing is a badge of honor that we must wear.
It really is, right? And yet it's often so tied to our worthiness. And if I'm not busy, I'm not worthy, right?
Yeah.
But I look at old Facebook posts from, 10, 15 years ago, and I'm posting about how productive I was today. What a productive day it was. Like it really was a badge of honor.
Yeah, it was, and it still is. And I think we are starting to see society kind of shift into like, okay, busyness is maybe not necessarily a good thing. And it's, ultimately we only can control what we're doing in our lives. And there are people in my life that are very, very busy and very focused on it. And I just think like I want to move with like ease and flow. And I just want to like be in that state of like as soon as I start to feel myself going a little bit chaotic, I'm just like chaos is a choice that I'm not choosing today.
Mm,
And then I like take a second and, do a couple deep breaths and like calm down. because that is not the choice that I'm making moving forward. That is not who is showing up. Because I think, like, ultimately, every message we get, every email we receive, it's an invitation to join a conversation. It's not a summons, it's not a demand. So, like, we don't need to respond this second. It probably will be fine if we wait a day or until we're done with our whatever we're doing at this present moment. So, if that's kind of like the way I see it, I would love to hear how you see it because I know you work busyness is like your Super Bowl. So, I'd love to hear more about you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the part of the challenge with the busyness is our inability or unwillingness to sit in the uncomfortable, right? So we keep our, I often talk about the different addictions: food, alcohol, drugs, right? You're fat, you're an addict, you're a drunk for those. But when you're busy, it's a badge of honor. You get atta girls, right? Patted on the back. And often, um, the problem with it is, in order to I'm going to say overcome it, work through it, is your willingness to sit in the uncomfortable, right? I mean, I used to weigh 300 pounds, so I had a whole bunch of addictions, right? I've never been hungry a day in my life. So even today, 30 years after I lost most of my weight, if I'm doing something at work that feels uncomfortable, that's outside of my norm, I'm like, oh, let me go get a snack. And then I stop myself and I'm like, hmm, are you hungry? No, you're uncomfortable. Okay, let's continue doing what you're doing. And then if you really want a snack, we'll go get it. So it's I've stopped with the awareness. And the same thing is with the busyness, right? If you're feeling that discomfort, that inner like shakeup inside of you, allow the response is usually to fill it, but allowing yourself to sit in it and knowing that you're safe on the other side of it, right? Like I can sit and feel this. It's because we're trying to not feel whatever's coming up. And
Yeah.
if we can allow ourselves to feel it and go, oh, I'm feeling scared, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling unworthy, I'm whatever, fill in the blank, and just sit with the feelings, because there's no right or wrong feelings. Feelings aren't good or bad, they just are feelings. Maybe journal about it, but allow yourself to actually explore what's happening. And then, I mean, I use different tools and techniques. I'm an EFT practitioner, so I've done tapping with my clients on it. And then we kind of get to the other side of it. And then you're like, oh, I could sit here for 10 minutes and do nothing, and the uncomfortable didn't kill me.
Right.
So next time, maybe it's 15 minutes.
Yes. No, I love that. I think another there's busyness, but there's also numbness. Is
Oh,
it
100%.
like
And the
we're
busyness is
all
numbing.
yes.
It's what's doing the job of the numbing.
Yeah. And we're like I personally was in that trap like you wouldn't believe. Like and it's another acceptable like way to be like, oh, like it doesn't matter. Like I'm not gonna feel it. I don't wish I didn't have feelings. Like I genuinely remember saying that to someone at some point in my life and like not great. We have evolved a little bit, but it's interesting to see like this numbness, this like let's not feel it because we can live all entirely in our heads now. We have these little apps and we're like watching all these pictures and we're like living in these screens, and so we're entirely up here and we're not in our bodies, and that's a huge problem. It's interesting. They also did a study at I believe it was Harvard on what is the underlying feeling behind burnout. So, like, what is the emotion? Because the
Mm,
emotion wouldn't be burnout. So, the emotion is loneliness. Because when you're burnt out, you feel like no one understands you and you feel like you're alone in your experience and you feel like no one gets it but you. And so
right.
loneliness, again, that social piece. Everyone's like, "Oh, well, I don't need to I work remotely. Maybe I don't see people regularly, but it's okay. It's fine. Like I have, whatever." But it's like, no, this is not okay. Social isolation is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That is
Wow.
not okay, and that is not good for you. Like,
Right. And it's interesting because the the staying home, right? There's so much more of that now. And the burnout, I'm curious because oftentimes people who get burnt out, they're doing because they feel like they have to do it themselves. They are like, they may feel alone after the burnout, but I'm curious if the burnout is also loneliness is also causing the burnout. I have to do this all by myself. No one else is here for me.
Yeah. No, I think it is a combination of both. Like, I don't think it's like a chicken and egg situation.
Right.
Like,
I was like,
the more
which
you go
comes
down that
first, right?
road, the
Yeah.
more it's a cycle, and it just, will
Yeah.
spin out of control really fast. I think, yeah, the burnout is the piece where it's like we just keep going. We're just like, oh, I'll just push a little harder, and I'll push a little. Like, that doesn't. I'll sleep when I'm dead. Like,
Right.
these kind
I
of
used to say sleep is a waste of time. I wish I could stay up all the time
yeah,
because I was a night person. I'm like, oh, I have to go to bed, right? But so
yes,
burnout is such a buzzword. Everybody's talking about burnout, but it's also really real, right? But I'm curious, what did burnout look and feel like for you, and how did you start to recover from that?
yes. So it's interesting because I don't think I realized that I was getting burnt out until like I was way too deep. And I
Which
think
I
that's
think is often the case, right? Like you crash and then you're forced to have to take action.
yes. So for me, burnout became really apparent. I was just like exhausted. Like, I didn't have the energy in my life to do things for my life. Like, I was like working super hard and doing things, and that was great. And then actually, I went on this trip. I was going to Ireland with my family, and I didn't have the energy to put a single, like, I didn't even Google a single thing. I just kind of showed up and followed behind everyone because I was like, I don't have time to do any of this. Like, I was exhausted, and the thought of like planning a trip to Ireland was beyond me. I was like, Mom, I will show up and I will be there and it will be great and I will have the best time, but I'm not researching anything. And like, that was the start of it. And then I was laid off, and I had to like sit still in the discomfort. And
Mm,
I got as every office supply lover at heart does, goes to the store and go to buy a sketchbook that has just big blank pages and these beautiful pens, because who doesn't love new pens? And I started like writing things down. I'd be like, oh, like, who am I? Okay, and then kind of like figuring it out and then getting through it. And a few days later, I ended up at my one of my friends' houses, and we're sitting chatting, and she goes, "So what are you curious about?" And I was like, "Curious? I don't have time to be curious. I'm exhausted." And she was like, "Hannah, I love you dearly. You are one of my best friends. You are one of the most curious people I know. So if you don't have time to be curious, if you don't have anything you're curious about, something's wrong. And like, you need to start there." And so she left me with that little bomb. She went to work, and I went to a coffee shop, and I wrote on this piece of paper on the sketchbook, "What are you curious about?" on the page. And I came up with 6 things. And I was like, wow, good job. You did 6 things. That was
right.
awesome. And over the course of like the next year, like, I started to like learn more about these things, and I started to really kind of like do some healing work and like slow down and a lot of this stuff. And a year later, almost to the date, accidentally, not on purpose, I was like, you know what? I should write down what I'm curious about. And so I wrote it down on the piece of paper again. Same sketchbook, a few pages later. Um, and I wrote it down again, and I had 9 times as many things as I did from the year previous. I
Wow.
had 56 items on that list. And I was like, wow, 1 year. And like, a lot of the things were much more niche answers of like what I was curious about last year. And I had just like explored it. So now I knew more about it, to ask more questions, to be more curious about more things. And I was like, that's really the work, is when you're really able to like get curious and be excited about things and have passion. And like, I couldn't have built this business if I wasn't as passionate about it as I am. And I don't think that, with the amount of burnout that I had, I could have summoned this level of passion and excitement.
What shifted in you in that year that allowed that change to happen?
Yeah, I think it was really quiet. And it was a lot of
Mm,
stillness. And I started with curiosity, and I started listening to audiobooks on creativity. And I specifically did like The Artist's Way. I don't know if you've heard
okay,
of
I've heard
that.
of that. Yeah.
It's a 12-week journey, and it's fascinating, and it's all about art and stuff, but it's also just creativity in general. You don't have to be an artist. And that kind of like opened my eyes to some things. And it was like, okay, like, continuing down this path, what am I curious about? I started taking a lot of classes, and I started like doing some different healing modalities and kind of like learning about different breath work and yoga and meditation. I started meditating a lot, and really like embracing the discomfort. Because if you had previously asked me if I was a person that was going to meditate or do any kind of like energy healing, the amount of eye rolling that I would have
I was
done.
gonna say, for those of you that are just listening and not watching on YouTube, Hannah just rolled her eyes.
Yes, I genuinely would have like, so, now where I am is a very different place. And I
Yeah,
understand that, we have depth in our well-being and that there's a lot of dimensions of well-being and that we can pay attention to all of them. And it's tricky because no one ever taught us any of this stuff. Unfortunately, like our health classes in schools are woefully insufficient.
right.
And so we have to like learn these things for ourselves. But um, I once I started learning this stuff and I was doing yoga and meditation and all these things, my mom was like, "When are you going to find the time to do this when you go back to work?" And I was like, "I don't know, but I can't stop. Like I need to keep doing this because I have never been happier or healthier." So,
Mm, I love that. How did your time inside the healthcare system really shape the way that you now support whole person well-being?
yeah, I think it's interesting. I went into healthcare because I wanted to help people and I was a business major and a healthcare major at the same time. I have both degrees. And I think that the way we see health in this country is like so in such a limited capacity. Most of us think about it as like physical health. We're starting to get there with like emotional health too. Um, but the reality is there's a lot more to it and there's a lot of like moving pieces. And the health literacy in this country is very low. So people don't understand that only 10% of your health happens in the doctor's office. So the rest of it, 90% of the time, you're on your own. It's what you're eating, it's when you're working out, it's the friends you keep, it's the curiosities you have. It is, all about your work environment. It's your personal environment. Where do you live? Um, and so, kind of learning about health literacy and just there's so much out there that would be so helpful for people to know and that people have access to because everyone has the internet right now, but it's so overwhelming. How do you give that into like
Right.
manageable doses of like things that people can understand and comprehend and implement? So I think that's really why I find it really curious. And I've studied a lot on health policy and how the healthcare system came to be. And I have a lot of opinions on that, but I think it's interesting that the healthcare system, as we call it, is actually a healthcare series of independent businesses.
Mm,
And if you think about it that way, you might feel a little bit more inspired to push back and ask questions and learn more and be more of an advocate for yourself in your own health.
yes. I'm learning that I don't know, 9 months, almost 10 months post knee replacement surgery. And I'm realizing I'm not getting better. Like it's actually gotten a little worse, but I was not my own advocate. The doctor kept pushing the surgery off for a few years. And even now, post surgery, I can't bend my knee. And he's like, well, the joint is fine. I'm like, yeah, but I can't, if I drop something on the floor, I can't get it. So now it's like, okay, yeah, I do have to be my own advocate. And we don't do that, right? We just, the person in the white coat knows the best. So we go, okay, thank you. So I'm getting second opinions and doing all kinds of other stuff right now. But yeah, it's important.
And it's hard too because the language we use around healthcare is so important. And when you say patient, people think, oh, I must be soft spoken and I must be calm and I must be kind and I must just do everything the doctor says.
Right.
And unfortunately, like the reality is, if you don't advocate for yourself, it will have long lasting impacts. And
Yep.
so patients need to be more
Right.
informed and aware and loud.
Yeah. Yes. I'm learning that the hard way.
I'm sorry that you have to learn it the hard way.
Yeah, thank you. So Presence and Co. is alcohol free by design. So I'm just curious, what led to that choice and how has that shaped the kind of community that you're building?
Yeah, that was an intentional choice that I made. I started drinking in 21, I think. Um, and when I stopped drinking, I started paying attention to the ways in which we build our entire social structures as adults, for friendship around alcohol. So are we going to brunch? We got to get mimosas. Are we, you know, doing a networking cocktail hour? Awesome. Are we, all of the ways that alcohol is just so accepted and so pervasive in making friendships as an adult and the social scene. And I think that there's a lot of people making different choices now. The studies are showing that people are drinking less alcohol. People are trying to be more intentional about their consumption. A lot of people aren't drinking at all, especially the younger generations. They're drinking far less than ever before. And I think that's in part people have seen the damage that alcohol has done to family lines and things like that. And I also just think that people are becoming more aware about the different ways to take care of their bodies. And they're like, oh, this doesn't make me feel good. It makes me feel terrible. Like, why would I want to do that?
Right.
So we are an alcohol-free space, and we have a mocktail vending machine. So it is filled with all sorts of options for people who want to have a beverage and enjoy their time and, really focus on genuine human connection. I do think when you're drinking, sometimes we think we're connecting because we're like having fun in the moment, but like,
Right.
are we really like our best selves? Are we putting, are we being vulnerable in that moment? I think probably not often. We're using alcohol as a shield usually.
Right.
Um, and so that's kind of the antithesis of what we're building here. So
Right.
it's changed the community, and I think it brings in people who are really focused on well-being and growth and connection.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who wants to be more intentional with alcohol but feels the pressure in social settings?
Yes, my favorite thing to say is just get a glass with anything else in it. Because if you're in a social situation and you don't have alcohol and you don't have a cup in your hand, people will ask you all about it. They will
Mm,
just bother you and they will bug you and they will keep asking. And if you have a cup and it has club soda, seltzer, Coke, a mocktail, whatever, they will not ask you a single question because they will not. Usually, they won't even realize that they're not drinking this, that
right.
you're not drinking alcohol and whatever. And for the people who are like really, there are some people who are going to be very vocal about the fact that you're not drinking. And you just have to remember that it is not about your relationship with alcohol. It is their relationship with alcohol that they
Right.
should be concerned about. Because if you can't be in a room and have someone who's not joining in alcohol and they're really upset about
Why
it,
do you think that is, right? That I do drink alcohol and I'm around people that don't, and I would never ask, right? I mean, I have a friend who the first few times we went out, she got a non-alcoholic beer. I didn't think twice about it. Eventually, she told me she just doesn't drink, and I was like, okay, right? There's no, but why do you think that is, that it's even a thing?
so it's interesting. It's the best time ever to be a person who doesn't drink because mocktails and non-alcoholic beverages are like commonplace now,
Yeah.
which is amazing because that wasn't always the case. And I think oftentimes the people who have a very secure relationship with alcohol, who are very like confident in themselves, won't ask, and
Okay.
they don't have the problem. But the people who get really offended, oftentimes you're like, okay, maybe you should reconsider your relationship with alcohol because if I'm offending you by not like being at your level, then like maybe you're depending too much on alcohol and it's, you know,
Right.
it's an
Right.
interesting world of like you're almost holding up a mirror to them and
Oh,
saying,
everything
"Hey,
is a
I'm not
mirror, right?
drinking."
Everything
Yeah.
is a mirror. Yeah.
And it's like, I'm not drinking. And so they're like, are you judging me for drinking? And it's like, I'm not judging you for drinking. I just don't want to participate in that. I
Right.
am going to judge you if you start judging me for not drinking, because then I'm like, well, maybe there's a problem
Who's got
here,
the problem here? Right.
you know? But it's
So let's,
fascinating, like the amount of times people will like get very upset. And
yeah, it's so interesting, right?
yeah,
So let's talk a little bit about Presence and Co. What are some of the things that people can expect when they come visit the space? And the space
yeah,
is in Reading, Massachusetts. So for those listening, it's which is like 20 minutes north of Boston,
yeah.
right?
We're just outside of Boston, about 20 minutes north. We are a space that we have several group community spaces, and we also have actually some co-working spaces as well. And it's all about building community and having people together in the space. So when you come in, there's phone jail, as I mentioned, and there is a community living room. It's like a quite a cozy space for people to kind of hang out and get to know each other and mingle. And then we also have a classroom, which we can set up with tables and chairs so that people can kind of do workshops or things like that. We also have a studio that can be for yoga or for dance, movement classes. It could also have lectures or things like that. And I think what I really want people to feel when they come into Presence and Co. is just that people want to be in the space. People want to be in community. People want to meet new people. And this is your opportunity to say, I know that if you came to this event, you're looking for more friends. So we're all starting from the place of we're looking for new friends, or we're looking to learn more about this topic, or we're curious as people. And that's a great starting point to like build a friendship on. So you can come into these events and activities and meet the people that are here. The energy at the events we've had so far has been so good. And it's just been like the most incredible um, openness and vulnerabilities. People are willing to really share about themselves and how it works and how the process is. And um, we were talking about mindfulness, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, I'm surprised that like everyone else also gets monkey mind." And it's like, yes, like that's how
Right.
it works. But that togetherness and not being alone is a huge piece of what I want people to feel here.
Yeah, I'm excited because I'm going to be running a monthly workshop there on the fourth Wednesday of the month.
I believe so.
Um, and it's going to be an opportunity for really geared towards midlife women to come together. And really, what I love about group work is you realize you're not alone, right? So often, you come in and you think, oh, I'm the only one struggling with this. And then when you're in community, and the woman next to you is like, oh no, I have blah 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 too, and then you realize you're not alone, and it feels less heavy to be able to carry that burden when you know that, oh, others are dealing with this too, and they can help me.
Yes, and I think there's a lot of people, especially in like the midlife area, where it's like, oh, well, like all my friends were my kids' mom friends, and like, it's all related to school and kids. And um, I like to think of it as like we could all use more people in our lives. And sometimes the people in our lives are maybe not interested in learning and growing, and maybe they're not ready to take on something new. But it's always good to have friends who are, actively working on themselves and actively like trying to do better and kind of learn more about themselves and be more self-aware. So I'm excited about that group. Um, I believe it is the fourth Wednesday. Did we say that? Fourth Wednesday of the month. And it's going to be all about connection. I believe Soulful Connections is
Yes.
the circle name. So if you
Yeah.
are interested in joining us, we would love to have you.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh, I could talk to you all day because this is one of my favorite topics is connections. But I always love to end with this one question. What is something that you live by that you want to share with our listeners?
Yes. Something that I live by design, intention.
Mm,
If I wake up in the morning and I say I'm gonna have a great day, I have a great day. And if I'm feeling chaotic and I don't want to feel that way, I sit and take a second and like, nope, I'm not chaotic. I am calm and I can handle this and it's fine. That ease, the stillness, that is something that has really changed my life in so many ways. So I think for people who are looking to kind of relax and to be more mindful and to live in intention, it's really just about awareness and noticing. And then like when something's not the way you want it to be, like, okay, how can I realign? How can I leave my phone in the room so it's not going to distract me, or take a deep breath so that I can calm the chaos, or reschedule this conversation for tomorrow because I'm not ready yet. Like just finding ways to really like design the life you want.
I love that. That's beautiful. What a beautiful way to end the conversation. So, as I do with all of my podcasts, I pull three cards. So, there are three cards in front of me. Today, we pulled the Oracle of Unicorn deck. I love unicorns. I don't know if you can see on top of my bookcase. I love unicorns. So I pulled this deck. So there's three cards. So there's left, center, and right. So I'm going to have Hannah choose. And for those of you listening, just take a nice deep breath and just see which card speaks to you today.
I'm gonna go with center since I'm feeling centered.
Expansion. Spread your wings and soar. Share your message and shine your light. Show the world what you're made of. That's exactly what you're doing right now with this, right? I love
That
that,
is pretty spot on.
right? And the left card is compassion. Be gentle with yourself. Forgiveness will set you free. See the light in yourself and others. So, for those of you that chose left, that's for you. And if you chose right, I love this because I actually don't usually peek, but this one I did peek at, and it was friendship. Seek out your soul family. Surround yourself with positive people. Spend more time socializing. So if you chose right, you need to get yourself to Presence and Co. I love how the cards always, I rarely look at them, but the friendship one and the expansion one, I happen to see both of them when they flipped out, but they almost always have something to do with the conversation. So it's always super fun.
I love that. That's amazing.
Yes. Hannah, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. Tell people how they can find you and Presence and Co. All the information will be in the show notes, but share that with them.
Yes. My website is presenceandco.net, and my Facebook is Presence Ampersand Co. And my Instagram is at presence underscore and co.
Okay,
So
perfect.
thank you so much for having me on. This has been so much fun.
Thank you for being here. And for those of you that are listening, you can find all of the information in our show notes. Thank you for being here today and have an effin' Friday.